My name is Claire, and this is the story of how the man who was supposed to love and protect me ended up being the one who shattered me the most. It's the story of how my father forced me to miss my own engagement, how he tried to control me, with threats, and how, in the end, he couldn't escape the consequences of what he had done. To the outside world, my family looked perfect. My dad was respected in the community, a stern but successful businessman. My mom was quiet, always standing behind him like a shadow, agreeing with every word he spoke. And then there was my older sister, Lily, the golden child. Everything she did was celebrated. When she got good grades, the whole family went out to dinner. When she landed her first job, my dad threw a party. She was his pride, his joy, the one who could do no wrong. And me, I was the disappointment, the too emotional one, the one who never quite lived up to Lily's shine. No matter what I did, it was never enough. When I brought home good grades, my dad would just nod and say, "That's expected." When Lily did the same, he would beam with pride. I learned early on that his approval was a prize I was never going to win. But I kept trying. I wanted so badly for him to look at me the way he looked at Lily, with admiration instead of criticism. Deep down, I thought if I worked hard enough, if I followed the rules, maybe he'd finally see me. But his love always came with conditions: obedience, silence, and sacrifice. Everything began to change when I met Ethan. He was nothing like my father, or anyone else in my family. Where my father was cold, Ethan was warm. Where my father demanded silence, Ethan listened. He made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't just living in Lily's shadow. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. We met in college, at a volunteer event painting classrooms for a community school. I remember the first time he spoke. To me his voice was gentle but confident, and when I looked at him, I saw kindness in his eyes. By the end of that day, we had talked for hours. Soon, we were inseparable. He became my safe place, my best friend, and eventually, the love of my life. After 2 years together, Ethan proposed. It wasn't some big flashy moment, it was simple, sweet, and perfect. He took me back to the very same classroom where we first met. The walls were painted fresh again, bright and full of life, and he got down on one knee, ring in hand, and asked me to marry him. I burst into tears before I even said yes. We started planning our engagement party right away. Nothing too big, just close friends, Ethan's family, and, of course, mine. Even though I dreaded it, Ethan wanted me to invite my parents and Lily. "Maybe this will be the moment things change," he said softly. "Maybe when they see how happy we are, they'll come around." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that deep down, my dad would show up for me, even if he didn't approve of my choices. So I invited them. When I told my father about the engagement, his face didn't light up. His lips pressed into a thin line, and his eyes darkened. "You're making a mistake," he said coldly. I swallowed hard. "Dad, I love him. He makes me happy. Isn't that what matters?" But he shook his head. "What matters is family. What matters is obedience. And right now, you're choosing him over us." The words stung, but I brushed them aside. Maybe he just needed time. Maybe seeing us together at the party would soften him. Maybe, for once in my life, he'd support me. But 2 days before the engagement party, he called me into his office. His expression was stone, his voice sharp as a blade. "Claire, you will not attend that party." My heart dropped. "What are you talking about? It's my engagement." "Of course, I'm going." He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "If you walk into that room, you can forget about finishing school. I'll stop paying for your tuition immediately. You'll be on your own." The air left my lungs. My scholarship covered part of my tuition, but not all of it. Without his contribution, I couldn't afford to stay in school. He knew it. He had found the perfect way to trap me, to remind me that even as an adult, my life was still in his hands. "Please, Dad," I begged, "don't do this. This is my future. Ethan is my future. Please just let me have this." But his face didn't soften. His voice didn't waver. "You'll do as I say, or you'll pay the price." I walked out of his office with tears burning my eyes, my hands trembling. I felt like I couldn't breathe. How could he do this to me? How could a father force his own daughter to choose between the man she loved and the degree she had worked so hard for? The night of the engagement party, I sat alone in my apartment. My phone buzzed again and again with calls from Ethan, from his family, from friends asking where I was. I couldn't bring myself to answer. Finally, I picked up Ethan's call. His voice was worried, confused. Claire, where are you? Everyone's waiting. I broke down, sobbing into the phone. I can't come. I'm so sorry. I can't explain right now. Please forgive me. He was silent for a long moment, and then I heard the heartbreak in his voice. Claire, this is our engagement. I know, I whispered, choking back tears. And I hate myself for this. I hung up before he could say anything else. And then I sat there in the silence, shaking, hating myself, hating my father even more. He had stolen that night from me. He had stolen something I could never get back. But as I sat there, one thought burned hotter and hotter inside me. One day, he would regret this. One day, he would realize he couldn't control me forever. And when that day came, he wouldn't be able to escape what followed. The morning after the engagement party, I woke up with my phone still clutched in my hand. My eyes were swollen from crying, and my chest felt like it was caving in. I scrolled through the dozens of messages and missed calls from Ethan. Some were short, worried texts. Where are you? Please tell me you're okay. Others were from his mom. We were waiting for you, Claire. Ethan looked so hurt. Please call me. I didn't reply. Shame burned through me. I had missed my own engagement. Not because I didn't love Ethan, not because I didn't want to be there, but because my father had chained me down with his threats. By the time I finally called Ethan back that afternoon, his voice was raw. Claire, what happened? Everyone was asking where you were. I told them you were sick, but I knew that wasn't the truth. Why didn't you come? Tears spilled down my cheeks. Ethan, I wanted to, more than anything, but my dad, he said if I showed up, he'd cut off my tuition. I don't have the money to finish school without him. He forced me to choose. There was a long silence. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice was low, steady, but laced with pain. Claire, I love you. I would have helped you. We could have figured it out together, but instead, you let him control you again. His words cut deep, but he was right. My father had once again pulled the strings of my life, and I had let him. That evening, I went to my parents' house. I needed to face him. I needed him to understand what he had done. When I walked into his office, he didn't even look surprised to see me. He was sitting behind his desk, scrolling through papers, as if he hadn't just destroyed the most important night of my life. You did the right thing, he said without looking up. The right thing. My voice cracked. You forced me to miss my own engagement. Dad, do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Do you know how badly I hurt Ethan? He finally looked up, his eyes cold. Better to humiliate yourself now than to make a bigger mistake later. That boy isn't good enough for you. Claire, you'll thank me one day. I shook my head in disbelief. No, Dad, I'll never thank you for this. You didn't protect me. You controlled me. You stole a night I can never get back. He stood then, towering over me. Watch your tone. As long as I'm paying for your education, you'll do as I say. Don't forget who makes your life possible. The words stung, because in some ways, they were true. I didn't have the resources to finish school on my own. But in that moment, I felt something inside me snap. I realized I couldn't live like this anymore under his thumb, at the mercy of his conditions. When I walked out of that house, I wasn't just angry. I was determined. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I had to break free. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Ethan and I barely spoke. He loved me, but he was hurt, and I couldn't blame him. He wanted to be with someone who could stand on her own, not someone whose father dictated her every move. I felt him slipping away, and it terrified me. At school, I threw myself into my studies, but every assignment, every exam was tainted by the thought that I was only there because I had obeyed my father. My degree no longer felt like an achievement. It felt like a leash. Then one night, I got a call from Lily. She rarely called me, and when she did, it was usually to brag. This time, her voice was hushed. Claire, I heard about what Dad did, about your engagement. I clenched my jaw. Of course you did. I'm sure he told you how proud he was of himself. No, she whispered. He didn't brag. He boasted to his friends that he had saved you from ruining your life. But, Claire, I think he's wrong. I think he's breaking you. Her words stunned me. My perfect sister, the one who had always been his favorite, was siding with me. Why are you telling me this? I asked. She hesitated. Because I know what it's like. You think he always praised me, but he didn't. He controlled me too, just differently. He chose my career, pressured me into relationships I didn't want. I just followed the rules. But watching what he did to you, that crossed a line. For the first time, I saw Lily not as my rival, but as someone trapped in the same cage. Her cage had gold bars, mine had rust, but both were cages. That night, I realized it wasn't just about my engagement. It wasn't just about Ethan. This was about years of control, years of manipulation, and I couldn't let it continue. I started working more hours at my part-time job. I saved every penny. I researched scholarships, grants, anything that could help me break free from my dad's financial hold. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Meanwhile, Ethan kept his distance. I knew I had to prove to him and to myself that I could stand on my own, that I wasn't just my father's puppet. One evening, weeks after the engagement disaster, Ethan showed up at my door. His eyes were tired, his face serious. "Claire," he said softly, "I need to know, are you going to keep letting your dad control your life, or are you going to fight for us?" I felt my throat tighten. "I don't want to lose you, Ethan. I love you. And I promise, I'm not giving up. Not on you. Not on me." He searched my eyes for a long moment, then nodded. "Then prove it. Not to me, to yourself." That night, I made a vow. My father had forced me to miss my own engagement, but that would be the last time he stole something from me. He thought he held all the power. But what he didn't know was that every cruel word, every controlling move, was only pushing me closer to breaking free. And when I finally did, he wouldn't be able to escape what followed. The vow I made that night became my fuel. Every time I felt the sting of humiliation from missing my engagement, every time I replayed Ethan's hurt voice in my head, every time I thought about my father's smug expression when he said I'd done the right thing, it reminded me that I could never let him have that power again. At first, though, it was terrifying. My dad had always controlled the money, the decisions, the narrative, my entire life. He had convinced me that without him, I couldn't survive. But slowly, I began to prove to myself that wasn't true. I picked up extra shifts at the bookstore near campus. I applied for every grant, every scholarship I could find. I even started tutoring high school students on weekends. It was exhausting, but it felt good, because for once, every dollar I earned was mine, not a string tied to my father's hand. And I wasn't alone. Lily surprised me by quietly supporting me. She didn't do it openly, she was still too afraid of Dad, but she would slip me little bits of advice, or send me links to scholarships, or just check in to remind me that I wasn't crazy for fighting back. For years, I had resented her, envied her. Now, I started to see her differently. We were both his daughters, and we had both been living under his shadow in different ways. Ethan noticed the change in me too. One night, he came by after one of my late shifts. I was still in my uniform, hair messy, hands sore from unpacking boxes. But when he looked at me, his eyes softened. "You're fighting," he said simply. "You're really doing it?" I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. "I can't let him win again, Ethan. I can't keep living like I'm his puppet. I want a life with you. And I'm going to make sure nothing stops me this time." He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly. "That's the woman I fell in love with. That's the woman I want to marry." Hearing those words gave me strength. But the road ahead wasn't easy. My father could sense the shift too, and he didn't like it. He started tightening his grip in new ways. He would demand to see my bank statements, asking why I was working so much. He'd make comments about how ungrateful I was for all he had done. And then, one evening, he dropped a bomb. "If you insist on marrying Ethan," he said coldly, "don't expect a penny from me. No wedding money, no tuition, no support. You'll be on your own." For the first time in my life, I looked him in the eye and said, "Good." The shock on his face was priceless. He wasn't used to me pushing back. He wasn't used to me choosing myself. For once, I felt like I had the upper hand. But my fight wasn't just with him, it was also with myself. Years of control had left scars, doubts, fears, the little voice in my head that whispered, "Maybe he's right. Maybe you can't do this without him." Every time that voice crept in, I forced myself to remember Sophie's face the night of the engagement party, waiting for me, believing in me. I remembered the tears in Ethan's eyes when he thought I'd chosen obedience over love. And I reminded myself that I wasn't doing this just to defy my father. I was doing it to finally live. Months passed. My savings grew slowly. My scholarships added up. And by the end of the semester, I realized something incredible. I could cover my tuition without him. The day I signed the paperwork, officially free of his financial leash, I cried tears of relief. It was the first real taste of independence I had ever known. And then came the moment that changed everything. My mentorship professor, who had watched me juggle jobs, classes, and my program work, recommended me for a leadership fellowship. It was competitive, prestigious, and came with a stipend that would not only cover my expenses, but also open doors I'd never imagined. When I got the acceptance letter, I screamed with joy. Ethan was the first person I told. He lifted me up and spun me around, laughing. "Claire, this is it. You're free. You did this. Not him. You for the first time." I truly believed it. But freedom comes with a cost. The more independent I became, the angrier my father grew. He couldn't stand the fact that I no longer needed him. He tried guilt. He tried threats. He even tried using Lily against me, but she refused this time. She looked him in the eye and said, "Dad, you've lost her. And if you're not careful, you'll lose me too." His face turned red. His voice shook with rage, but for once, he had no power. We weren't his puppets anymore. Then, one evening, as Ethan and I were sitting together planning our future, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my father. Just 5 words. "You'll regret defying me, Claire." I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. But instead of fear, I felt something else resolve. He had already taken so much from me. He had stolen my engagement night, humiliated me, tried to control every step of my life. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because I knew something he didn't. He was about to face consequences he could never escape. What came next would turn the tables in ways even I couldn't have imagined. The message from my father, "You'll regret defying me," Claire replayed in my mind like a siren. Once, those words would have paralyzed me. But now, they lit a fire. He wanted me afraid, but all he managed to do was remind me exactly why I had to keep fighting. Not long after, life gave me the opening I never expected. The leadership fellowship I had been awarded came with not just money, but connections. Suddenly, I was working alongside city officials, nonprofits, and business leaders. My name started showing up in local newsletters and community boards. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just Lily's sister or Robert's daughter. I was Claire, my own person, with my own reputation. And it was that reputation that ended up colliding with my father's. One of the fellowship projects was a partnership with small businesses in town. We were tasked with helping struggling companies modernize and apply for city grants. When the list of participating businesses came out, my heart nearly stopped. Right there, in bold letters, was the name of my father's company. At first, I laughed. The irony was too perfect. My father, the man who had controlled me with his money, was now in a position where he needed help. And not just anyone's help, the program I was part of had influence over which businesses got approved for funding. I wasn't directly assigned to his case, of course. That would have been too obvious. But everyone knew who I was. Everyone knew he was my father. And suddenly, the whispers began. "Isn't that Claire's dad? I wonder what she'd say about his company." I didn't have to do anything. His reputation started unraveling on its own. For years, he had built an image of being in control, but now, the same people he had bragged to were asking me for my opinion instead. The first time we ran into each other at a public meeting, the look on his face was priceless. He tried to act unaffected, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the tight grip on his folder. When someone introduced me as one of the brightest fellows in the program, his eyes flickered with something I had never seen before: uncertainty. That night, he called me. His voice was stiff, forced. "Claire, I think we should put the past behind us. You're in a good position now. Maybe we can work together." I almost choked. This was the same man who had forced me to miss my own engagement, who had humiliated me, threatened me, made me feel small my entire life. And now he wanted to work together. "No, Dad," I said firmly. "You made your choice. Now you can live with it." He started to protest, his voice rising, but I hung up. For the first time, I ended the conversation on my terms. Meanwhile, Ethan and I grew stronger. He saw the way I was fighting, the way I was finally standing tall, and it brought us closer than ever. One evening, he said, "Claire, you don't need your dad's approval anymore. You've proven who you are. You've proven you're stronger than him." I smiled through tears. I just wish he could feel what I felt. I wish he knew what it was like to be powerless. That wish came true sooner than I expected. Months later, during a fellowship event, the city announced the businesses that would receive grant funding. My father's company was not on the list. His outdated practices, his stubborn refusal to modernize, and his arrogant treatment of staff had finally caught up with him. When the announcement was made, I caught a glimpse of him across the room. His face was pale, his jaw clenched, his pride shattered. It wasn't my doing. I hadn't sabotaged him, but I didn't need to. Karma had done the work for me. Afterward, he approached me, his voice quieter than I had ever heard it. "Claire, maybe I was too hard on you. Maybe I made mistakes." I stared at him, waiting for the words I had longed to hear all my life. But they never came. There was no real apology, No acknowledgement of the pain he had caused. Just vague admissions. Carefully chosen so he wouldn't have to face the truth. "I missed my own engagement because of you," I said softly. Do you know what that felt like? To hear the man who raised me tell me that love was less important than obedience. He looked away, his eyes wet but his pride unbroken. "I thought I was protecting you." "No," I said firmly. "You were protecting your control. And now you've lost it." I walked away before he could respond. And this time, he didn't chase me. Weeks later, Ethan and I held a small ceremony with friends and his family. No big hall, no grand speeches, just love. As we exchanged vows, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My father had stolen my engagement night, but he couldn't steal this. He couldn't touch the happiness we built. Afterward, I posted a photo of us, smiling, rings on our hands, surrounded by people who actually cared. I didn't tag him, didn't send it to him, but I knew he'd see it, and I knew it would burn, because the truth was simple. He had forced me to miss my own engagement, but he couldn't escape what followed. And what followed was me living a life without him. For a long time, I thought revenge would look like fire. I thought it would mean destroying my father the way he had destroyed me, shouting the truth in his face, making him beg for forgiveness. But when the moment finally came, when he stood there powerless and I walked away stronger than ever, I realized real revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's as quiet as living well. My dad forced me to miss my own engagement, and for months I carried that pain like a stone in my chest. But what followed was something he could never control: my determination to rise. He wanted me small, obedient, dependent. Instead, I became independent, resilient, and free. That was the revenge he never saw coming. Even now, years later, I can still picture the look in his eyes when he realized he had lost his grip on me. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't even disappointment. It was fear. Fear of a world where I didn't need him. Fear of the truth that his control had always been an illusion. I don't know if he lies awake at night replaying the choices he made. I don't know if he regrets forcing me to miss my engagement, or if he tells himself he did it out of love. But here's what I do know: his words no longer define me. His threats no longer bind me. His approval no longer matters. Because I built a life without him. A life with Ethan, who saw my worth when my father refused to. A life surrounded by people who cheer for me, not people who try to silence me. A life where my voice is mine, my choices are mine, and my future is mine. And every time I hear laughter in my home, every time Ethan looks at me with love, every time I help someone else break free from their own chains, I feel the weight of my father's control slip further and further away. He thought he won when he kept me from my engagement. But in the end, I won because I chose love over fear, freedom over control, and happiness over obedience. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been made to feel like you're not enough, or like your choices don't matter unless they're approved by someone else, hear me when I say this: you are enough. You don't need permission to be happy. You don't need anyone's blessing to live your life. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong. The best revenge is living so fully, so freely, that their opinion no longer matters. My dad forced me to miss my own engagement, but what he couldn't escape was what followed: me becoming stronger than he ever imagined.